Hi, everybody. I'm Tony Plohetski, and I want to again thank you for joining us for our legal roundtable every night at 6:30. We have been inviting Austin attorneys and Travis County, Central Texas attorneys to join us to help us break down and understand the day's developments in the historic impeachment trial of Ken Paxton. I want to introduce two of our guests. They are both repeat guests, and so we are deeply appreciative of their time. Adam Loewy, who operates a civil firm here in town, Amber Vazquez, who is a defense attorney practicing in Central Texas courts. So I want to ask both of you, and Amber, I'll actually start with you with this question. So the defense had considerable time left on the clock to present their case. They called 4 witnesses today. They put on a witness yesterday. Does the fact that they're not using all of their time mean something to you? Does it express something with regard to how they feel about the strength of their case?
Absolutely not. Everything is strategic. There are a million cases in which I could have 12 witnesses, and when it comes time to put them up, there are 3 that I need. As the defense, what you do is you're listening to the other side, what they are saying, and figuring out what will move the ball on our side based on what they said and what they testified to. So you are being very strategic, because what you don't need to do is put up unnecessary witnesses, because the defense theoretically doesn't have to produce as much. This is on the prosecution to prove up an impeachment, not the defense.
So it means nothing to you that the prosecution used all of this time, the bulk of the time for the trial, and the defense used very little. Adam, do you share Amber's assessment?
I totally agree. In fact, earlier this week on Twitter, I actually predicted they might not call anyone, and they wound up proving me wrong, and they called a few witnesses. But I think the witnesses weren't really that good. It was a bunch of attorney general employees who obviously were saying everything here was kosher, the terminations were fine, nothing to see here. And immediately you have to say, well, they work for Ken Paxton. What else do you expect him to say? So I agree with Amber's point that the House here has the burden, and the defense can simply say, look, y'all haven't proven this case, so we're done. And pretty much the defense did that today with a very brief presentation.
Yeah, Amber, what do you make of the fact that their witnesses were all attorney general employees, current employees, who got up there and said, nothing to see here, essentially?
Well, that was the least surprising thing of this trial so far. I would say that is the safest route you can go as the defense in this case, because like Adam said, the burden is on the prosecution in this. And so you can simply say they didn't prove it. So, but that's a bold move. So I'm not surprised that Mr. Busby decided to call some witnesses, but they played it real safe.
So I want to ask you, ask you both. The defense rested its case today. There is built-in time for rebuttal evidence, it is called. Amber, can you explain to us sort of what the concept of rebuttal evidence is? Kind of take us to Law School 101. The concept of rebuttal evidence, it doesn't seem like either side is going to present any, but explain what it is and why you would or would not present rebuttal evidence.
Well, rebuttal is important because rebuttal is something you can get into with issues that are only brought up by the prosecution. So you can bring in, even though you haven't noticed an expert on a particular subject. For instance, if the prosecution brings in an expert that says, I'm an expert in fraud, here's what I see, here's why I think it's this. Even if the defense has not noticed an expert on rebuttal, you can bring whoever you want to fight anything that was not specifically, or that is specifically addressed in the prosecution's case, but even if they didn't notice people on that, which is required. So rebuttal is a little more open than a direct or cross.
Do you think that they would present any, or is it something commonplace for a side to present rebuttal?
If there is something that needs it. Now, if I am the prosecution or defense, I'm going to play it real close to the chest here. And because putting on any more witnesses opens up your case for more fodder. So anytime you put a witness up, you are open to opening up the fight. So you better be real sure of what that witness has to say.
So, Adam, going into this, if you're feeling good about your case, that is one solid reason to not do rebuttal.
Without a doubt, I didn't expect him to do a rebuttal presentation. And most importantly, the jury here is bored. The senators know what they're going to do. They've been sitting in this chamber for almost 2 weeks. They are ready to hear closing arguments, and they are ready to vote. And I think today, it was smart by Tony Buzbee to put on a limited number of witnesses and call it a day. Because whether Ken Paxton gets impeached or not and removed will really depend on what the House put on the last week and a half. So I don't think we'll see any rebuttal witnesses. I think it will go to the jury early afternoon tomorrow, and then we'll see what happens.
Adam, while I've got you, I want to just ask if you are preparing closing arguments for either side tomorrow. What is the thing that both sides must do to clinch their case?
Well, I think the prosecution must connect the dots. I don't think they did that in the opening. I don't think it was a good opening. I personally felt their case was kind of all over the map. So they need to simply and decisively go through the evidence, connect the dots with some major themes, whether it's quid pro quo, whether it is abuse of office, whatever it is. I think they need a very simple and concise explanation as to why the Texas Senate needs to remove Ken Paxton. On the flip side, I think Tony Buzbee actually has a much simpler job. I think he will say, look, the standard here is reasonable doubt. That is the highest standard in law. And that you as the Texas Senate have to make a decision whether you're going to remove a duly elected attorney general who literally won his office, who was reelected 2 years ago. And I and the defense do not believe the evidence is there. And he will go through it and simply say, look, they couldn't prove quid pro quo. They couldn't prove that the whistleblowers actually did anything other than report him. Today, Ken Paxton has not been indicted federally, and Nate Paul has not been indicted federally on these issues. Therefore, let the people of Texas decide. They have spoken. Ken Paxton stays in office.
Amber, how about you? What must both sides do to clinch their case?
Well, I agree with everything Adam said for sure. But coming from the defense side, they need to show that this is political theater. So if I'm Tony Buzbee, I'm going to hone in on the political aspect of this, because that is, that's red meat for supporters, but it's also, I think, the proper defense in this case is that this is, all of this. Now, if I'm the prosecutor, I would do exactly what Adam said, and I would use as many tools as I could to connect the dots. Like, I would actually put something together that showed specifically what connected with what, as far as who did what when, like timelines, specifics, because it does feel a bit amorphous with the way in which the whistleblowers and everyone else's complaints went forward.
Amber, we certainly know this is anything but a regular jury. We know that they do not have to reach any sort of unanimous verdict. So just looking to the future, and I promise I'm not going to hold either one of you to this, how long do they deliberate? I mean, do we end the day tomorrow night with a verdict one way or the other?
I think they already know what they're going to do. That's my instinct, like Adam said. But I also think there's political theater involved. And so I think it's important that everybody at least appear like they're really reviewing the evidence and looking at it carefully.
How about you, Adam?
I think it's a fascinating question. I mean, are they going to go back to a separate room and sit there like a regular jury and go through the evidence? I tend to doubt it, because I think they know what they want to do. But that said, if they don't deliberate at all, I also think it looks a little strange. In the deliberations, I don't know if they're going to try to convince each other as a regular jury would do, or if everybody knows how this is going to play out. But I think that we will likely get to a vote tomorrow. I think the men and women of the Texas Senate want to go home. Keep in mind, session is not going on right now. And I think that they want to be done with this. So I think that we'll get to a vote tomorrow, and we'll see if a moment in history happens.
One last thing, Adam, you were pretty certain, you felt pretty certain earlier this week or the last time we talked that Ken Paxton would be convicted. Is that where you sit tonight?
I still believe he will be removed, but I have more doubt. I do not think the House put on a great presentation. And to me, the biggest question is, we know that there are 12 Democrats who will vote to remove him. That means there only needs to be 9 Republicans to join them, and Ken Paxton is gone. But does Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick want a 12-9 vote with a Democratic majority removing the Republican Attorney General? I don't think so. So I think you're either going to see a decisive number of Republicans joining the Democrats, or Ken Paxton might have a chance to walk from this.
How about you, Amber?
I think it's the most political trial that I've seen in my career. I don't think there will be a more politically driven trial probably in the history of our state for a long time. I think that the decisions were made a long time ago. That's my impression on this. And I agree with Adam. I think a 12-9 vote would be very hard. I would expect it maybe a little more nuanced than that, but something close.
But we could know 24 hours from now. So thank you both for your expertise, for opening your knowledge to us and helping us walk through however this ends, is going to be a historic moment in Texas history. So I want to thank you both again. Thank you all for continuing to watch, and we'll be here tomorrow at 6:30. See you then.
Thank y'all.